The wind wasn't cruel that night, just cold enough to remind you that some things don't care if you're ready. Marilyn Stokes stood at the edge of her daughter's new driveway, her hands gripping a suitcase that weighed less than it should have. One wheel was broken. It leaned like it shared her exhaustion. Behind her, the mansion still wore its red real estate ribbon like a smug badge of success. Marble steps, copper fixtures, floodlights bright enough to blind a memory. Her hair, damp from the rain, clung to her scalp. Mascara bled into the soft folds under her eyes. But she didn't cry. Not yet. Her daughter, Camilla, stood tall at the doorway. Her posture, stiff lips pursed like she was posing for a victory portrait. "You'll never see a dime of my money," Camilla spat, voice sharp enough to splinter bone. "You old witch." The words didn't sting the way they should have, not after everything. Not after the months of watching Camilla change after the check arrived. It was the way she said it. Like Marilyn wasn't a person, like she had never once mattered. The suitcase dropped to the concrete with a hollow thud. The latch popped open. Socks spilled like surrender flags. Underwear, a worn blouse, a framed picture face down on the wet pavement. Marilyn knelt slowly. Each joint ached with the effort, but her pride hurt more. She picked up the socks first, one by one. She tucked the photo back in without looking at it. Behind her, Camilla's boyfriend, barely older than her own son, watched with folded arms and a smirk that said, "I won." He hadn't spoken a word all night. He didn't need to. "Get off my property," Camilla snapped, "or I'm calling the police." Marilyn stood slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Not yet. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice soft, barely louder than the wind. Camilla laughed. "You really think you can guilt me into keeping you around? I worked for this. I earned this. You're not entitled to anything just because you're old and broke." Marilyn looked at her, not with anger, with something colder, emptier, like watching a stranger wear your daughter's face. "I raised your kids," she said quietly. Camilla scoffed. "Babysitting isn't currency. I paid your rent, covered your tuition, kept your lights on. You chose to." That was true, and that's what hurt most. Marilyn didn't say another word. She picked up her suitcase, even though the zipper was busted. She clutched it to her chest like it could shield her from the truth she had raised a daughter who no longer recognized sacrifice when it wasn't wrapped in bows and dollar signs. Rain trickled down the back of her collar. She stepped off the porch, one foot sliding slightly on the slick driveway. Camilla didn't flinch, didn't offer a blanket, not even an umbrella. Marilyn's shoes squelched in the mud as she made her way to the curb. Her old Corolla sat parked at the edge of the street like it didn't want to be seen. The driver's side door groaned as she opened it. The seat was still warm from earlier that day when she'd driven Camilla's boys to soccer practice while their mother shopped for Italian faucets. She sat there for a moment, the door still open, the rain slipping down onto her lap. Then, like an afterthought, she pulled out a small receipt from her coat pocket. A lottery ticket. She unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases like it was a sacred thing. Camilla never knew she bought one. It was just a ritual, something she and Marilyn used to do for fun. A someday kind of hope. But this ticket, this one was real. Marilyn had checked the numbers the night before, twice. $10 million, no mistakes. And she'd signed the back just like the clerk told her to years ago when she first started playing. Always sign it Han, just in case. Only now it wasn't just in case. It was everything. 3 weeks earlier, it had been different. They'd still been in the old house. Camilla had just lost another job, the fourth one that year. Marilyn didn't ask why. She just filled the fridge, took the boys to school, made tea. That night, Camilla had stormed into the kitchen ranting about rejection emails and fake job listings. Marilyn, quiet as ever, had tried to lift the mood. "I grabbed a ticket," she said, holding it up. "Maybe this one's the charm." Camilla hadn't even looked up from her phone. Sure. Maybe. Marilyn smiled anyway. She pinned it to the fridge with a silly magnet shaped like a cat. Then she turned back to the dishes. That was the last time they felt like a team. 2 days later, the ticket was gone. She hadn't asked, not directly. She'd checked the junk drawer, the pile of mail, the fridge, just the magnet left. She wanted to believe maybe it had fallen behind the counter. Maybe the boys had moved it. But then Camilla came home with new shoes, a new phone, a grin too wide for her face. And then news broke. The winning ticket had been bought at their neighborhood corner store. Marilyn didn't confront her, not yet, because deep down she needed to be sure, not about the money but about the daughter she thought she knew. Now, sitting in the car, rain beating down on the windshield, Marilyn let the silence wrap around her. She pulled out the second paper of photos she had taken on impulse the day she bought the ticket. Blurry. But the numbers were there, and the receipt, still tucked in her wallet, dry safe. She didn't cry. Instead, she pulled out her phone, scrolled through her photos until she found the surveillance selfie she took outside the store. That stupid smile, the corner store's neon flickering above her head, the timestamp. It was enough. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, then started. Camilla hadn't even waited to see if she'd drive away, because she didn't think Marilyn could do anything. Didn't think she would. But the truth was, Marilyn had given Camilla everything, and now she was done giving. Marilyn drove without music, without heat, just the sound of her own breath and the steady rhythm of the wipers smearing rain across the windshield. Every streetlight she passed felt like a spotlight, exposing all the things she'd refused to see for far too long. Camilla hadn't just thrown her out, she'd erased her. And all for money she hadn't earned. But what Camilla didn't know, what no one knew, was that Marilyn hadn't forgotten the rules. The quiet ones. The ones people ignore until it matters. She signed the ticket. And in the state of Virginia, that signature meant ownership. If Camilla never checked the back, if she never flipped it over before cashing it in, then she had no legal claim. It wasn't hers. It was Marilyn's. She parked outside the corner store just before 9 p.m. The lights inside were still on. A man swept behind the counter, Ben. He looked up as she entered, brushing rain off her coat. "Miss Marilyn," he said, surprised, "you're out late." She smiled tightly. "I need to ask you a favor." He raised an eyebrow broom, pausing mid-sweep. "Everything okay?" Marilyn walked up to the counter, pulled the ticket from her coat, unfolded it carefully, and laid it down like a delicate confession. Ben stared at it, then at her. "Wait, this is the one, the ticket." She nodded once. His eyes widened. You bought it here." Monday, 4:43 p.m. "I took a selfie right after I left. I signed it. Look." She flipped it over. Her name was there in soft, slanted handwriting, slightly smudged but unmistakable. Ben leaned in. "Well, hell, sorry. That's wild. You bought the winning ticket." Marilyn didn't answer, not directly. "I think someone took it, and I think they cashed it in as their own." Ben dropped the broom completely. That's serious." She pulled out her phone and showed him the selfie, her outside his store, holding the ticket up like a joke. The timestamp matched. "I don't want trouble," she said. "I just want to make things right." Ben scratched the back of his neck. "We've got cameras. For security. Want me to check?" Marilyn's heart stuttered. "Yes, please." He disappeared into the back, and for a moment the store was completely silent, except for the low hum of the fridge and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. She stood there, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. Not trembling, not yet, but close. 10 minutes later, Ben came back, a small monitor in his hand. He turned it toward her. "There," he said, pointing. "That's you, Monday, 4:43. Grainy black and white footage played. She stepped into frame, pulled out her wallet, paid in cash. He handed her a slip. She took a pen from her purse, paused, then signed. The camera caught everything: her face, the signature, the handoff. Ben exhaled. "That's you, no doubt. Can I record this?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." Marilyn lifted her phone, pressed record. The grainy footage flickered. She didn't speak, just let the video speak for itself. Proof, undeniable. And in that moment, something shifted. The doubt she'd carried like a second skin, the fear that she was being petty, the voice that whispered, "Just let it go." All of it went silent, because now she knew. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't wrong. She had been stolen from. The next morning, she called the State Lottery Commission. A woman named Irene picked up. Marilyn explained everything. The date, the location, the signature, the missing ticket, the footage. There was a pause on the line. Then Irene said, "We'll need to open a formal investigation. Can you provide everything you mentioned?" "I can. If your name is on the back of the ticket and we can verify you purchased it, you may have legal grounds to challenge the payout." Marilyn closed her eyes. Can you freeze the winnings? Yes, Irene replied. Once the claim is under review, we have the authority to pause disbursement until ownership is verified. Thank you. She hung up the phone, then sat in her kitchen. Same creaky chair, same chipped mug of tea. But something was different now. Not just because she had proof, because she had power. Camilla, meanwhile, had no idea. She was too busy posting. That day, Marilyn checked her daughter's social media. Photos from a spa, a caption manifesting more millions, a story from a luxury car dealership, video of champagne glasses clinking, comments full of fire emojis, and you deserve it from people who had never once babysat her kids. Camilla didn't know, didn't even check the name on the back of the ticket, and that tiny mistake was the thread that would unravel it all. That afternoon, Marilyn called a lawyer. Her name was Dana Yu, a referral from a retired neighbor who dealt with something similar. Dana had steel gray eyes and a voice that made people stop talking. She read Marilyn's documents in silence, the receipts, the photos, the surveillance video. When she finished, she looked up. This isn't just theft, she said. It's identity fraud, and it's prosecutable. Marilyn didn't flinch. I don't want to press charges, she said quietly. Not unless I have to. Dana nodded. Understood. But I'll prepare everything, just in case. They submitted the evidence that afternoon. By Friday, the Lottery Commission had opened an official claim. The payout frozen. The name under review. Camilla's world hadn't cracked yet, but the fault line was there. And Marilyn, quiet forgotten, Marilyn was holding the chisel. That night, she didn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of memory. Camilla at 6 running through the sprinkler in a red swimsuit. Camilla at 16 sobbing after a breakup, crawling into Marilyn's bed like she was still a child. Camilla at 27 saying, I'll never leave you, Mom. Never. Words said in comfort. Never meant to survive opportunity. Now they had. And the truth was coming. Marilyn didn't need to scream, didn't need revenge. She just needed justice. And justice at last was listening. Marilyn didn't check her phone the next morning. She didn't need to. She knew what would happen, even if it hadn't yet. The dominoes were lined up. Camilla was still dancing on the edge of a stage she didn't build, and the lights hadn't gone out yet. But they would, because the truth doesn't knock. It walks in when it's ready. The state lottery office confirmed receipt of all evidence, the surveillance footage, the selfie, the signed ticket, the time-stamped store receipt, and a notarized affidavit from Ben the cashier. The payout remained frozen. Dana, calm and precise, called to update her. The commission is moving fast, she said. They've reviewed your documentation and are preparing to transfer ownership pending final verification. Marilyn's fingers tightened around the phone. And Camilla, she asked. They haven't contacted her yet, Dana replied. Legally, they don't have to. Not until the public notice goes out. That could take a few more days. Marilyn nodded. Good. She didn't want to warn her daughter. Let the silence do what years of shouting couldn't. Let her keep sipping champagne from a lie until the glass cracked in her hand. Camilla posted a new video that evening. Marilyn watched it from her kitchen, the sound low, her tea cooling untouched. Real queens, Camilla said into the camera. Her curls perfectly styled, her tone smug. Don't ask for permission. They take what's theirs. The comments flooded in. Yes, Queen, show them how it's done. You're such an inspiration. Marilyn didn't scroll past. She didn't turn it off. She stared at the screen like it was a window into a life that used to include her, but now slammed shut in her face. One comment stuck. Cutting out toxic people is the best thing I ever did. Camilla had pinned it. Marilyn blinked once. So that was the story now. She wasn't the mother who raised her, who fed her, who paid for diapers and school books and sat through every IEP meeting when the boys were struggling. No, she was toxic. She was the dead weight, the leech, the embarrassment. Marilyn printed out every post, every comment, every caption. She didn't cry. She organized them into a folder because this wasn't about feelings anymore. It was about facts. Later that week, Dana called again. The commission has concluded the preliminary review. Your claim is valid. Marilyn stayed quiet. The check will be reissued under your name, Dana added, and your daughter will be informed after the public announcement is made. She'll find out the same way everyone else does. Good, Marilyn whispered. Then added, no contact. Not yet. Dana agreed. Meanwhile, Camilla kept bragging. New pearls, new rooftop bars, new hashtags, and our millionaire mom. Boss queen out the mud. But something else changed too. The photos of her sons. They stopped. First one photo a week, then none, Marilyn noticed. She always noticed. Camilla wasn't just distracted. She was unraveling. That weekend, a new message popped up in Marilyn's inbox. It was from one of Camilla's old high school friends, Shira, a woman who hadn't spoken to Marilyn in years. Hi, Mrs. Stokes. I know this might be awkward, but I just wanted to check in. Camilla's been acting different, kinda cold. My cousin says she ghosted her after promising a business deal. It's none of my business, but are you okay? Marilyn didn't reply. She didn't need pity. She needed peace. And it was finally on its way. Monday morning, the press release went out. A small blurb on the lottery's official website. Reissued claim. The rightful owner of the $10 million jackpot purchased at Linden Gas and Market on April 8th has been identified as Marilyn Stokes of Fairfax, Virginia. Due to a misfiled claim, the funds were temporarily withheld. The commission has confirmed legal ownership through surveillance footage, signed documentation, and time-stamped purchase data. Payout to Miss Stokes is scheduled for reissue this month. Simple, undeniable. Camilla didn't post anything that day, nor the next. And then came the silence. No spa photos, no fashion hauls, no manifesting mantras, just digital dust. Marilyn waited, not with glee, with patience. 2 days later, the first call came in. Blocked number. She didn't answer. Then another, her sister. Then the local news. She ignored them all. Finally, Camilla's number lit up her phone. She let it ring. Once. Twice, 3 times, then voicemail. A pause. Then her daughter's voice cracked, breathless. You took everything. You humiliated me. You had no right. Marilyn hit delete. Then silence again. And finally peace. But the story wasn't over, because justice wasn't a moment. It was a movement. A slow, patient rising of truth. And Marilyn. She was just getting started. The day after the press release, Marilyn sat at her kitchen table, buttering toast with deliberate care. No radio, no TV, just the birds outside and the hum of the old refrigerator stubbornly still alive after 22 years. Her tea steeped beside her untouched. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't tired. She was waiting. Not anxiously, not even hopefully. She was just ready. Camilla's silence had lasted longer than expected. No posts, no comments, no cryptic quotes about snakes or betrayal. Just an absence where noise used to be. Until noon. The knock came like a slap-sharp, impatient familiar. Marilyn didn't rush. She placed her butter knife down, wiped her hands on her napkin, and stood. She knew who it was before she even got to the door. Camilla. Framed in the glass like a ghost hair, unwashed, dark circles under her eyes. No foundation, no filters. Just flesh and consequence. Marilyn opened the door only part way. Camilla didn't wait for permission. She pushed it open the rest of the way and stepped inside like it was still her right. I need to talk, she said, voice raw. Marilyn stepped back without a word. Camilla stood in the middle of the kitchen like she didn't recognize it. Like the chipped countertop and faded wallpaper had betrayed her too. She looked smaller, not physically, but in presence. Marilyn waited. Camilla crossed her arms. Defensive. You really went through with it. Marilyn raised an eyebrow. They told me this morning. The commission. They said the payout's been frozen and the ticket's been reassigned. It has, Marilyn said simply. You can't do this, Camilla snapped. I already invested so much. The car, the house, my name's on everything. No, Marilyn replied. My money is on everything. Your name is on very little. Camilla's face flushed. I didn't know it was your ticket. You didn't ask. You didn't say anything. I shouldn't have to say what's already mine. That shut her up for a moment. Camilla's gaze dropped to the floor, then to the photo frame still hanging crooked on the wall, an old picture of her and the boys at the zoo. Marilyn had taken it. That was back when Camilla still smiled without mirrors. Why didn't you tell me? She finally asked, her voice quieter now. Would it have mattered? Camilla opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because they both knew the answer. I thought we were done, Camilla whispered, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. That you gave up on me. I didn't give up, Marilyn replied. I just stopped cleaning up behind you. Camilla swallowed hard. So this is revenge. No, Marilyn said calm. This is a boundary. The silence stretched. And then Camilla's voice cracked again. I need help. There it was, the truth stripped bare. Not remorse, not love, need. The same thread that had tied them together for years. Only this time, Marilyn didn't rush to wrap herself in it. I helped you for decades, Marilyn said softly. I raised your kids, paid your bills, covered your lies, and the first time I asked for space, for honesty, for a little respect, you shoved me out like garbage. Tears welled in Camilla's eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. Mom! Marilyn didn't blink. You left me in the rain, and then you smiled about it. Camilla shook her head. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew enough to block me, to call me a leech, to let strangers laugh at me while you danced in pearls. Camilla winced like the words were punches. I made a mistake, she whispered. No, Marilyn said. You made a choice. They stood in that kitchen for what felt like an hour, surrounded by the echoes of their life. The kettle she always used, the notes on the fridge, in her careful handwriting, the clock that had ticked through every argument and apology. I lost everything, Camilla finally said. You gave everything away, Marilyn corrected, to people who clapped for your destruction, and now that the clapping stopped, you remember me. Camilla's jaw tensed. So what, you're just going to leave me out in the cold? Marilyn tilted her head, echoing her daughter's words from 3 weeks before. You don't get to mooch off me just because you're broke. Camilla gasped like hearing her own cruelty out loud for the first time. Marilyn didn't enjoy the look on her face. She didn't gloat. She simply picked up her teacup, now the perfect temperature, and took a sip. You can stay for tea, she said finally. 1 cup, and then you leave. Camilla blinked. That's it. That's mercy, Marilyn replied. They sat. Neither of them spoke for a while. Camilla's eyes wandered old photos, chipped paint, the tiny stack of unpaid bills by the microwave. Marilyn didn't hide them. She never had. Is it true, Camilla finally asked. You signed the ticket that day. Marilyn pulled open the drawer to her right, calmly retrieved the folder, and slid it across the table. Camilla opened it. Inside, receipts, photo timestamps, surveillance footage, stills, the signed copy. Her mouth opened, then shut. And for the first time, Marilyn saw it recognition. Not of the evidence, but of the person across from her. Not just her mother, a woman. A woman who'd held everything together for years. Without applause, without conditions, without payment. And finally, she said what Marilyn had waited a lifetime to hear. I didn't think you'd fight back. Marilyn looked at her daughter. Really looked. And then smiled. I know. To be continued. Next part 5, I let her drink from a golden cup built on my sacrifice. But now she thirsts for something money can't buy. Camilla didn't finish her tea. She wrapped her hands around the mug like it was the last warm thing left in her life, but didn't drink. Her eyes were swollen, not from tears, Marilyn suspected, but from a hangover of bad choices and worse company. When the cup clinked softly against the saucer, Marilyn stood. That's enough for today. Camilla didn't protest. She rose slower than she'd arrived, like the gravity of the house was heavier than she remembered. At the door, she turned. I might lose everything she said. Marilyn nodded once. Yes. Camilla hesitated. You're okay with that? I'm not okay with it. I'm just not stopping it anymore. The door closed behind her with a soft click. No slams, no storms, just finality. The air felt different after she left. Still, lighter. Marilyn moved back to the kitchen and poured the remaining tea down the drain. It was cold now, like everything else that used to hold warmth between them. She didn't sit. Instead, she pulled the curtains back and let the afternoon light pour in. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a failure. She felt clear. The next few days were quiet. Camilla didn't come back. No more calls, no more voicemails. But Marilyn knew better than to think it was over. The real storm doesn't come when someone's screaming. It comes when they realize no one's listening. She went to the post office, collected a stack of letters, some legal, some congratulatory, a note from the lottery commission with official instructions. A congratulatory letter from the mayor's office inviting her to attend a community champions banquet. Marilyn read it, chuckled once, and dropped it in the bin. She didn't need a plaque. She already had her name back. She took a walk through the old neighborhood. The houses still looked the same. Brick and siding and chipped mailboxes, kids' bikes and driveways, lawns needing trimming. A neighbor, old Mr. O'Brien, waved at her. "Haven't seen you in a while, Marilyn." "I've been dealing with a personal project," she replied. "Well, whatever it was, you're glowing," he said. She smiled. Not because he was wrong, but because he had no idea how long it had taken to feel this way. The next day, the local paper ran a small story on page 3. Local woman recovers stolen lottery winnings after daughter's fraud claim. Marilyn skimmed it. It wasn't wrong, but it wasn't the whole truth either. It left out the sleepless nights, the hospital visits when Camilla overdosed at 22, and Marilyn stayed by her side for 4 days straight, reading aloud to keep her conscious. It left out the trip to her own mother's funeral that Marilyn skipped so she could watch Camilla's kids while she found herself in Arizona. It left out every single time she traded peace for presence so Camilla would never feel abandoned. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that at last she had chosen herself. And then, just like that, Camilla broke the silence. She sent an email. Subject line, "Please." 2 sentences. "I can't pay the mortgage. The lawyer says I might lose custody if I can't show income. I messed up, Mom, please." Marilyn read it twice, then closed her laptop, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. She'd learned something in the stillness, something she'd never let herself believe before. Not every cry deserves an answer. Not when the mouth that cries also cursed you. Not when the hands that type also pushed you away. That night, she called Dana. "Can I donate a portion anonymously?" "Yes," Dana replied, "but you'll still need to claim the funds publicly first. It's policy." "I understand. I'm ready." The press conference was small, just as Marilyn requested. A simple room, a banner, a single podium. No red carpet. No cameras except one from the Commission for Official Documentation. She wore a dark green blouse. Pressed, clean, modest. She didn't dress to impress. She dressed like she belonged. Because she did. "Ms. Stokes." The spokesperson began, "We are honored to recognize you as the rightful recipient of the $10 million prize." The room applauded politely. Marilyn stepped forward, smiled once, and took the microphone. "My name is Marilyn Stokes," she said, "and I bought that ticket." She paused. She didn't tremble. "I've made a lot of sacrifices in my life. Most mothers do. We're used to giving without asking, to loving without limits. But what I've learned, what I hope others remember is this kindness, without boundaries, becomes permission for abuse." Another pause, a breath. Sometimes the hardest thing a person can do is walk away from the people they raised. But I didn't walk away because I stopped loving. I walked away because I started loving myself too. No tears, just truth. The applause this time was louder. And it wasn't polite. It was earned. Back home, Marilyn took off the blouse, hung it neatly, and sat by the window with a book and a slice of lemon cake she'd bought from the bakery near the post office. Outside, the sky was pink and soft, the kind of evening where nothing hurt and everything made sense. She didn't think about Camilla, not in bitterness, not in sorrow, just in stillness. Somewhere out there, her daughter was learning what Marilyn had already learned. There is no luxury greater than a clear conscience, and no thirst deeper than the one created by your own betrayal. It was a Tuesday when the letters started arriving for Camilla. Not fan mail, not invitations, final notices. One was from the bank loan review pending due to suspicious claim origination. Another from the luxury car dealership lease terminated asset retrieval initiated. And the one that landed hardest, a letter from family services. Review of custodial stability underway, pending employment verification. Camilla didn't post a single word about it, but Marilyn didn't need a phone to know her daughter was spiraling. The silence was the post. At the grocery store, Marilyn passed the same corner where she'd once spotted Camilla, in line with her boys giggling over cereal and whispering about which candy they could sneak into the cart. That had been 6 years ago, before Camilla started thinking motherhood was something to survive instead of someone to become. Now the boys weren't with her. Now no one was. A week after the press conference, Camilla showed up again. Not at Marilyn's house, at Dana's office. Without an appointment. Dana later recounted it to Marilyn over coffee. She came in loud, arrogant. Told my receptionist I ruined her life. Said she wanted to sue. Marilyn stirred sugar into her coffee calmly. "And what did you say?" Dana smiled. I handed her the surveillance footage, the receipts, your signature. Her silence lasted 3 minutes straight. Marilyn chuckled, not cruelly, just tiredly. "She's not used to silence," she said. "She thinks it means surrender." Dana nodded until it becomes evidence. Camilla hadn't understood the power of silence. She'd mistaken Marilyn's years of quiet endurance for passivity. But endurance is not permission, and silence, when filled with truth, speaks louder than rage ever could. Back home, Marilyn was beginning to do something she hadn't done in years. Plan. Not for someone else. Not around daycare schedules or overdue bills or a daughter's latest restart. She was planning for herself. A small renovation for the kitchen, new flooring, a reading nook near the window. She'd already picked out the lamp. Maybe a trip, not far, just the coast, somewhere with salty air and no memories. She'd go alone. And for the first time, the thought didn't scare her. It felt sacred. Camilla, meanwhile, was unraveling in private. Gone were the posts. Gone were the friends who once toasted to her glow-up. Marilyn knew how that game worked. People love a rising star, until it falls. Then they act like they never looked up. One evening, Marilyn sat in her kitchen and reread the email Camilla had sent. The one that said, "Please." She didn't respond, but she did draft a new email to Dana. Subject: donation request. Body: "I'd like to set aside $2 million in ours a trust for women rebuilding after abandonment, fraud, or betrayal, single mothers, grandmothers raising kids who aren't theirs, survivors of economic violence. I want no credit, just quiet impact. Name the fund whatever you like. Just not mine." She hit send before she could overthink it. The next morning, Dana called. "Marilyn," she said, "that's generous." "It's not charity," Marilyn replied. "It's reclamation. I want to turn ashes into kindling for someone else's fire." Camilla found out 2 days later. She didn't reach out to thank her. Of course not. Instead, she tweeted her first post in weeks. Funny how people donate to strangers when their own family's drowning. It was gone within an hour, but not before someone screenshotted it. Sent it to Marilyn with a single word: yikes. She didn't reply. She just closed her phone. Because here's the thing about healing. It gets quieter the deeper it goes. One night, she dreamt of Camilla. They were both younger. She was brushing her daughter's hair the way she used to before school picture day. Camilla kept fidgeting. "Hold still," Marilyn whispered. Why, her daughter asked. "It doesn't matter. You're the only one who'll see it." Marilyn leaned close in the dream. "It always matters," she whispered. "Even if only I see you." She woke up crying. But not from pain, from release. Camilla had once been her entire world. Now she was just a woman who made her own choices and had to live with them. Marilyn didn't wish her harm, but she no longer protected her from the truth. She signed the final paperwork that Friday. The trust was official. The funds transferred. And for the first time in decades, Marilyn was free of any financial or emotional tether to her daughter. The guilt, gone. The fear, gone. What remained was a soft strength, a quiet knowing. She hadn't just survived. She'd reclaimed her narrative. And sometimes the loudest justice is simply living well. The first thing Marilyn noticed when she stepped outside that morning wasn't the crispness of fall or the gold-tipped leaves crunching under her shoes. It was the silence. No texts, no missed calls, no veiled threats, no pleas. Camilla had finally gone quiet again. But this time it didn't feel like escape. It felt like acceptance. There was no dramatic apology, no knock on the door in the rain, no airport dash, no social media spectacle, just absence. The kind that doesn't ache anymore, the kind that feels like healing. Marilyn took a slow walk to the farmer's market that Saturday. She bought honey from a woman with wind-chapped cheeks and laughed out loud when someone's toddler offered her a half-licked lollipop. She lingered by the apple bins, touching each one like it might hold a memory. This time last year, she was buying groceries on a credit card, hoping Camilla would send something by Friday. Now she had more than enough. But oddly, she wasn't spending like someone rich. She bought an old novel from a secondhand stall, an enamel mug shaped like a barn. and a soft lavender sachet that reminded her of her grandmother's dresser drawers. Because real wealth doesn't shout, it settles. Later that evening, Dana sent a text. FYI, your daughter filed a formal objection to the trust distribution. It'll get thrown out, no legal basis. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Marilyn stared at the screen for a long moment. Not angry, just tired. She typed back, "Thank you, no action needed." Then she put the phone face down and lit a candle. The flame danced quietly, like it knew. Camilla's objection was denied within 3 days. The judge's ruling was succinct. No legal ownership, no standing, no further action required. Dana forwarded it with a note. This chapter is closed. And just like that, the story that had started with a stolen ticket and a broken heart now had its legal ending. But Marilyn wasn't interested in endings anymore. She was interested in beginnings. She started writing again. Little things at first, memories, lists, the occasional recipe she always kept in her head. Then longer pieces, reflections, notes she never sent. One of them began. You stole something from me, Camilla, but it wasn't the money. It was the illusion that we were still a team. She didn't finish that one. Didn't need to. The act of writing it was enough. Sometimes closure isn't a letter sent. It's a sentence you no longer feel obligated to complete. She joined a book club, nothing fancy. 6 women who met in a library basement and brought cookies. They didn't know her story, only that she had kind eyes and always remembered who brought what. One of them asked where she worked. Marilyn just smiled. I'm newly retired. It felt good to say it. Not between jobs, not helping my daughter, just retired, free. She passed by Camilla's old house once by accident. Or maybe not. The for sale sign had been removed, but the curtains were drawn now. The lawn unkempt, the aura different. Not a home, just a shell. Marilyn didn't slow down, didn't crane her neck. She just kept driving. Because what's the point of looking back at a throne built on sand? She was planting tulip bulbs in her front yard when the letter arrived. It wasn't from Camilla. It was from her oldest grandson, Ryan. A drawing, crayon bold and imperfect. A stick figure with gray hair and big glasses. A heart next to it. The back said, I miss you, Grandma. I don't know what happened. Mommy cries a lot, but I remember the pancakes. I hope you're not mad. Marilyn's breath caught in her throat. She sat on the front step, dirt still under her fingernails, and let the sun dry the tears on her cheeks. She didn't reply right away. Not because she didn't want to, but because some things deserve time, thought, reverence. Later that night, she wrote back. Short, sweet, safe. I miss you too, sweetheart. My door is always open to love. Pancakes are still here whenever you're ready. She included a Polaroid of the front porch. 2 plates, 2 mugs, an empty chair, just waiting. Because unlike Camilla, her grandson hadn't broken her trust. And Marilyn believed in second chances, especially when the heart asking for one was still learning how to beat with kindness. She mailed it the next morning, hand-delivered to Dana's office so it could pass through legal review. Because the world was different now. And while her heart remained open, her boundaries had locks. She stood on her porch that afternoon, watching a squirrel raid her new bird feeder. Somewhere behind her, her phone buzzed with notifications she wouldn't check until evening. She took a sip from her enamel mug and exhaled. The kind of exhale that comes not from exhaustion, but from release. Camilla thought the throne she built made her untouchable. But thrones don't last. And crowns don't hold weight. Only roots do. And Marilyn, she was finally growing something for herself. The letter from Ryan sat on the mantel for a week. Not because Marilyn forgot it, on the contrary. She saw it every morning right after she made tea and every night before bed. It sat beside an old photo of them at the pumpkin patch, Ryan with 2 missing front teeth, Marilyn holding his tiny hand while Camilla looked away, already half on her phone. That was before everything fractured, before Camilla started seeing love as leverage and Marilyn's kindness as a currency to burn. Marilyn didn't need reminders to love Ryan, but now she was learning something harder, how to love without sacrificing herself in the process. It was slow work, but she was patient. On Thursday, she received a message from Dana's assistant. Camilla has requested supervised visitation rights to allow the children to reconnect with their grandmother. She's agreed to all conditions and signed the temporary custody stipulation. Would you like to proceed? Marilyn sat with the email for a long while. The words weren't surprising, but they meant something. Not because Camilla had turned a corner, Marilyn had no illusions there, but because she'd finally stopped blocking the door between her kids and the only adult who'd shown up for them consistently. She clicked reply, then typed just one sentence. Yes, I'd love to see my grandsons. And hit send. Her hands trembled. But not from fear, from hope. The supervised visit took place at a quiet family center 2 towns over. Neutral walls, oversized windows, staff who offered tea and spoke in gentle tones. Ryan arrived first. He burst through the door, spotted her, and ran arms, flung wide backpack, bouncing on his shoulders. Marilyn opened her arms like muscle memory. When he collided into her chest, she almost couldn't breathe. Grandma, he said, muffled by her sweater. You still smell like cinnamon. She laughed through her tears. That's because I never stopped making pancakes. He pulled back, beaming. I told Danny you weren't gone forever. Marilyn blinked. And Danny believed you. He said I was dreaming, but I knew, I remembered. They colored, played Uno, ate chocolate chip cookies from a napkin. The staff watched quietly. Camilla did not attend. Marilyn didn't ask why. She was simply grateful for the absence. That night she sat in her newly rearranged living room. The couch now faced the garden, the old TV unplugged, bookshelves blooming with dog-eared paperbacks and secondhand poetry. She didn't know what would happen next, whether Camilla would fight again, whether the boys could ever really come back to her full time. But she wasn't trying to control the future anymore. She was simply making space for it. A few days later, Camilla sent a message through Dana's office. I've decided to move, sell the house, maybe go stay with friends out west. I don't want the boys to leave town. If you're willing, I'd like to discuss temporary guardianship. No tricks. I don't want them lost in this. No apology. No warmth. But for the first time, no arrogance. Marilyn didn't reply right away. Instead, she visited the garden, pulled weeds, watered her tulips, spoke to the dirt like it could hear her soft and slow, and then she went inside and replied, if it's truly about the boys, we'll do what's right, but it will be legal, it will be documented, and it will have boundaries. It took 3 weeks of paperwork, 4 meetings, and 1 emotionally numb court date. But in the end, the boys were placed under Marilyn's temporary care officially. Not as a favor, not as a backup, as a guardian. As their constant. The first night they stayed over, she made pancakes for dinner. Danny spilled syrup on the rug. Ryan snuck a spoonful of whipped cream straight from the can. Marilyn didn't scold them. She just smiled. And when they curled up beside her on the couch, blankets tangled cartoons humming in the background, she whispered, "You're home." Neither of them said a word. But they didn't need to. Their breathing deepened. Their shoulders softened. And for the first time in a long time, Marilyn wasn't surviving. She was living. Camilla called once. She didn't say much. Just that she was heading west. That she needed space. That she didn't know who she was anymore. Marilyn listened. She didn't offer advice. Didn't scold. She simply said, be kind to yourself and kinder to them. Camilla didn't reply. The call ended. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a door slamming shut. It felt like a window cracking open. Marilyn didn't wait by the phone after that. She didn't check social media. She didn't replay the past in her head like a tape she couldn't stop, because she had 2 boys asleep upstairs, and a house full of laughter returning inch by inch. She had mornings now that began with sticky fingers and cereal crumbs and knock-knock jokes that made no sense, and evenings filled with baths, bedtime stories, and tiny feet racing down the hallway. She had peace, not because someone gave it to her, but because she built it, brick by brick. After being used, discarded, and left behind, she stood on her porch one evening, watching fireflies rise like sparks from the grass. Danny leaned against her leg. Ryan held her hand. Grandma Ryan asked, "Yes, love. Do you think people change?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at the boy beside her, the boy who had once drawn her with giant glasses and a crooked heart. Then she looked at the stars above. "I think they can," she whispered, "but not everyone chooses to." Ryan nodded slowly and said nothing else. But he squeezed her hand, and in that squeeze was everything she needed to know. The house had changed, not in structure, not in paint, but in energy. It no longer echoed with absence. It pulsed with presence. Lunch boxes by the door, mini sneakers by the mat, school drawings clipped to the fridge with crooked magnets, laughter, arguments over bedtime, little footsteps at 6:12 a.m. sharp. It was chaotic, messy, demanding, and exactly what Marilyn had missed without knowing. The trust she'd established was already helping others. Dana sent monthly reports now. One recipient, a grandmother in Michigan, raising 2 toddlers after their mother disappeared. Another, a single mom in Kansas whose partner drained their accounts and fled. Marilyn read each letter with gratitude, not pride. She didn't need to be thanked. She just needed the cycle to break somewhere, even if not in her own bloodline. Camilla had gone quiet again, not just silent absent. No calls, no updates, no mail forwarding. Marilyn knew better than to chase ghosts. She'd done enough of that for decades. Now her job was to plant roots. Ryan was adjusting fast, smart, observant, protective of Danny in that quiet older brother way. He helped with dishes, asked thoughtful questions, sometimes woke from dreams calling for his mom, but never with panic. Just confusion. Grief perhaps still fogged around the edges of his smile, but it didn't consume him. He had a new anchor now. Danny was different. Younger, softer. He cried easily, especially at bedtime. He asked if his mommy hated him. Marilyn knelt every time and said the same thing slowly. "Your mommy loves you. She just forgot how to show it right now. But that's not your fault." And then she'd hold him until his sobs slowed into sniffles, then snores. She never added bitterness, because that kind of inheritance was not hers to pass down. The courts reached out 6 weeks later. No contact from Camilla. Would Marilyn be willing to shift guardianship from temporary to permanent? She didn't answer right away. She watched the boys sleep for 3 nights before deciding. Watched them breathe and twitch and mumble through dreams about dragons and recess and ice cream trucks. And then she wrote back with a single sentence. "Yes, I choose to stay." They held the final hearing on a rainy Wednesday. Marilyn wore her soft gray cardigan, the one she always wore when the boys were babies. Camilla didn't show up. Her court-appointed representative claimed she'd been unreachable for 11 consecutive days. The judge barely needed an hour. Ruling granted. Papers signed. Custody changed from emergency to forever. Marilyn didn't cry in the courtroom. She waited until they got home and the boys were unpacking their backpacks and the kitchen smelled like grilled cheese. She stepped into the pantry, closed the door, let the quiet cradle her, and she wept, not from grief, from the weight finally sliding off. The next day, she wrote a letter to Camilla, not to mail, just to write. "You didn't take my future. You didn't break me. You simply removed the one person I was never supposed to carry forever. I mourned you like a loss. Now I release you like a storm that has passed. I have found peace not in what I lost, but in what you left behind. And I will raise these boys with the kind of love that never asks for payment. Goodbye, my daughter, for now or for always." She folded it, placed it in the back of a drawer with old photos and unsent birthday cards. Maybe one day she'd give it to her. Maybe not, but either way it was out of her chest. That Sunday, Ryan asked her, "Can we build a fort in the living room?" Marilyn laughed. "We don't just build forts in this house, we design them." They hung blankets from bookshelves, stacked pillows into walls, brought in snacks like soldiers, marching into cozy war. Danny added flashlights. Marilyn brought cookies. Inside that crooked dome of clothespins and comforters, they giggled under shadows and shared secrets. "I like it better here," Ryan whispered. "Why?" Marilyn asked softly. "Because no one yells, and the love feels quiet but big." She kissed his head. Because that was the kind of legacy she wanted. She hadn't just reclaimed her life. She'd rewritten it. Without drama, without spectacle, without revenge. Only roots, only truth. Only love. And though Camilla had disappeared from view, Marilyn wasn't watching the door anymore. She was watching the boys grow into their own strength. And this time she wouldn't let silence mean absence. It would mean presence. It would mean peace. Spring came slowly that year, as if the world itself had decided to heal alongside Marilyn. The tulips she planted months earlier, back when she still wasn't sure if anything would grow, began to bloom. Purple, yellow, one stubborn white one pushing up through gravel. Danny called it the miracle one. Marilyn just smiled and said, "Sometimes the ones that take the longest are the strongest." Life with the boys settled into a rhythm. Morning cereal and mismatched socks. School drop-offs and lunch notes with doodled hearts. Afternoons filled with homework and backyard tag. Evenings of storybooks and blanket forts and questions she didn't always have answers to about mothers and memories and what happens when people disappear. Marilyn never lied, but she never poisoned either. She gave them honesty wrapped in safety. The people we love sometimes forget how to love back, she said. But that doesn't mean we stop loving. It just means we learn to love ourselves harder. The lottery money sat untouched in a dedicated account. Interest growing. Time passing. She'd only spent a fraction on the house, on the trust, on shoes that fit and books that mattered and curtains that didn't let the cold in. She didn't need diamonds. She needed dignity. And she had more of that now than ever before. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Postmarked from Arizona. No return name. Just a shaky scrawl on the envelope. Inside 3 lines. "I see what I've done now. You were never the weight. I'm sorry." No signature. But Marilyn didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable. So was the pain between each word. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into the same drawer where the unsent one lived. Then she lit a candle and sat by the window. Not with sorrow, with compassion. Because forgiveness for her had never meant forgetting. It meant refusing to let the wound rot. She didn't reply, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Camilla's road was hers to walk now, and Marilyn's, it was leading somewhere else entirely. The community center invited her to speak. Someone from the trust board had shared her story carefully without names. Marilyn declined the first time, but accepted the second. Not because she wanted to talk about the money, but because she wanted to talk about freedom. On stage, she wore a simple blue blouse and no makeup. She spoke slowly, not nervously. "I thought the worst thing that ever happened to me was losing my daughter," she began. But it wasn't. She paused. "The worst thing was losing myself trying to keep her close." Heads nodded in the room. Eyes brimmed. "I gave and gave," she said. "And I told myself that love was supposed to feel like sacrifice, like silence, like folding yourself smaller so someone else could stretch." Another pause. "But love, real love, is not supposed to leave you empty." A breath. "And healing didn't come when I got the money back. It came when I stopped asking to be seen and started seeing myself." The applause wasn't loud, but it was full. Afterward, a young mother approached her. "Thank you," she whispered. "My mom always says I'm too soft, too quiet, that I'll get walked over. But listening to you, I think soft might be strong after all." Marilyn smiled. Soft wasn't weakness. It was survival with a heartbeat. Later that week, Ryan brought home a school assignment. Write about the bravest person you know. His paper had crayon doodles in the margins, one lopsided heart, one pancake. He'd written, "My grandma is the bravest person I know. She didn't yell when life was unfair. She just stayed. She makes pancakes when I'm sad. And she teaches me that quiet can be strong. She's not a superhero. She's just mine." Marilyn cried reading it. But they were good tears, clean tears. On a quiet Sunday morning, Marilyn stood on her porch as the sun rose. Danny was still asleep. Ryan was reading comics under the kitchen table, half a Pop-Tart in his hand. The wind was soft. The sky was clear. And for the first time in years, Marilyn felt like her life was hers. Not borrowed. Not bargained. Hers. She had loved deeply. She had been used recklessly. She had been discarded, ignored, and rewritten by someone who should have honored her story instead of erasing it. But she had rebuilt, word by word, boundary by boundary. And now she wasn't waiting for apologies. She wasn't watching the door. She wasn't listening for her name on anyone else's tongue, because the ticket hadn't saved her. She saved herself. As she turned back into the house, the phone rang, a familiar number. Her hand hovered. Then she answered. "Hello." "Mom," it was Camilla. Her voice was small, not manipulative, not pleading, just real. "I just wanted to say thank you for the boys, for not shutting them out." Marilyn closed her eyes. "Of course. I'm still trying. I don't know what I'm doing." "You don't have to figure it all out today," Marilyn said gently, "but you do have to try. For them. For yourself." A long silence. Then, "I'm not asking for anything. I know. I wanted you to know I'm still here." Marilyn smiled, tears prickling her eyes. "I never stopped knowing." They didn't talk long. They didn't promise anything. But maybe, just maybe, a seed had been planted. Not for repair, not yet, but for truth. And truth, Marilyn had learned, grows best when it's watered with time. That night, she tucked the boys into bed, kissed their foreheads, turned off the lights, and sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a single sentence in her journal. "I didn't just get the ticket back, I got my life back. And this time, it's mine alone. Quiet, whole, and free."